Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Thunder, and this is Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. Sorry we weren't around last week. Crazy week. Very busy, all kinds of stuff. I was actually playing with 7-time Grammy Award-winning composer, arranger, pianist, Maria Schneider. And we did, let's see here, 4 shows. Did 4 shows, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I know our show's on Wednesday, but that meant that rehearsal started Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then, in addition to that, Wednesday night, Wynton Marsalis and the Lincoln Center Band was at the place that I work at, the school I teach at. We brought him in, and that was excellent. There's some pictures with the family, and also my son got a couple pictures with him. And my son is at that age where he's just about to have to pick an instrument because he's going to play something at least until he graduates from high school. Some musical instrument. We got a bunch of stuff around the house, but it seems like he may be gravitating towards trumpet. So that's pretty cool. So anyhow, it was a busy week. But tonight's show is going to be a really good show, especially for those that you have a business and you're trying to strategize how to get to the next level, right? Charting a course to success. That's what today's show is about, charting a course to success. And we're going to use the life of and business acumen, expertise, training, and all around wholesomeness of one Ike Ogiamian. Well, maybe not the wholesomeness part. To educate and to provide this sort of research data for our conversation. So anyhow, we're here, we're ready to go, and you know how we do it. It is that time, and yes, it's Getting It Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. Let's go. Warning: some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Yeah, disturbed by all this success, all this productivity. Some people may be disturbed by that. So, you know.
Uh,
But these days they get disturbed by all kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff that just change the station. Go do something else. Everybody don't have to say what you want them to say, the way you want them to say it, and all of that jazz. Anyhow, how are you
mm.
doing, Ike?
I'm doing well, fired up, ready to go after a week of hiatus here from getting ish done, if you will. But I'm doing well. Still in the Africa base here till April, it seems.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're getting this done out in Accra, Ghana, eh?
Yes, getting ish done out in Accra, Ghana. As a matter of fact, on Friday, I'm gonna go visit another site. Might do a little short or take a little picture or something of what's going on over there. But
1 second. I'm gonna pull something up here. This was a moment, and I had meant to. I was going to send it to you.
hmm,
I was going to send it to you, and for whatever reason, I don't know. I forgot to send it to you. But here I'm going to pull it up here, and and you can see. Oh, what is that? What does that say?
uh, on the air, you're in the whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't see any writing, Doctor Thunder.
You don't see any writing? How, wait, hold up here. See if I can. Let me see if it'll let me make it bigger here.
Oh, Accra, Ghana, over there in the top
Oh,
left corner.
Akragano. There's Akragano right there.
Oh, are
When this
you
was.
playing over there? Was that you?
No, no. You know what this is from? This
Where is
is
this
from
from?
the
Where is this
Super
from?
Bowl. This is from the Super Bowl. I
Oh,
thought
they're
that was.
watching this.
Yeah, it's from the Super Bowl. They're watching the Super Bowl there. This was on TV. It was just like like one of their things. Hey, the NFL around the world. It's like one
Ah,
of them things. And blip, they said this is one of the locations. And I was like,
yeah,
hey,
they're
Accra Ghana. I
yeah.
was like, hey, is that Ike? Is that Ike right there? I think I see Ike in
Yeah,
there.
that'd be funny if I don't watch the
Yeah.
Super Bowl in the United States and then I come to Ghana and then I start watching. Oh,
Right.
a lot of a lot of a lot of ADOS African American folks over here in Ghana actually. So and I think it's going to actually continue to increase uh,
Passport
because
Bros.
the government um, passport bros will increase, but the African aspect of passport bros is still not very much a thing because it's an economic thing, right? Like it costs a whole lot more to cross the Atlantic than to just go south, right?
Right.
But the government encouraged the year of the return, they called it. I think it was like 2018 or whatever it was. You know,
Mhm.
there's a general encouragement of African Americans coming back here and whatnot, and you're not going to get as scammed as you might in Nigeria. So, it, you know,
Those
it
dirty
seemed to like it.
Nigerians. Dirty
Yep.
Nigerians. Anyhow, I'm only serious when I say that. Anyhow, I got an email the other day from a Nigerian prince. Anyhow, we'll see if that investment works out for me. Anyhow,
I'm rooting for you.
yeah, right. uh, I told him that I have a wealthy friend that's also Nigerian, so he might want to get in on it too. And he happens to be in Accra, Ghana right now, so he's not that far
Oh,
away. I
excellent.
mean, you should be hitting him up. So, um,
Just link up.
that's right. So, somebody's saying that brothers need to go to Thailand. Oh, so this brother right here.
Hmm.
Nah, Thailand,
Oh,
East Asia.
Yeah, Thailand, maybe, because, you know, you go out to the played out. Like, well, why not Cambodia? Why not Laos? Like, why not? I mean, Vietnam or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Um,
actually, it's interesting that you said Vietnam because Big Truck, shout out to Big Truck,
mm,
he is all about he's all about this. Apparently, he has some sort of deal with some. It, 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 it's kind of like a courting agency, or like a, you
mm.
know, where they like connect folks, and they're, I guess they're targeting the passport bros, and it's a Vietnamese thing. So that's interesting. Anyhow, Ike, how long have
Hmm.
you been in business? And you can take that question however you'd like to. You could talk about the various businesses that you're involved in, and
Hmm.
maybe give us a little bit of an origin on what got you started. Maybe start in school. When you decided you wanted to do something similar to what you're doing now, and whatnot.
Gotcha. So I started Prometheus Engineering in 2014. What is that now? That was 7 years and 21. So that's 9 years now. Is that, am I correct? Wow, 9 years already. That's rather interesting. In addition to Prometheus Engineering, or parts of Prometheus Engineering have now include real estate ventures that I'm into, and that's why I'm in Accra, Ghana over here. Building apartment complexes, buying land for agricultural purposes, and things of that nature. And then there's some kind of ancillary investments that go off on the side, which one would might call personal investments at that point, right? But if we go back to what the origin story is, I said Prometheus Engineering, so I'm an engineer. I have a master's in engineering. I have a professional license in 6 states: California, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Nevada, and one other one. I
Mm.
keep on forgetting the last one. So the origin story to that is, obviously we can do a long version, we could do a short version, but one thing that I've always had is curiosity and creativity, and that would have put me in a particular direction, into maybe a little bit more artsy or something like that. But for some reason, I really liked physics, and I recall there was a book that kind of I like that was like 6 years old. My older sister, or elder sister, I don't know what the correct thing is. Elder sister introduced us to this book. It's about, it's, Democritus and the atom, and when you comb your hair, and static electricity, and all these interesting things about, about the roots of physics. And I kind of really remember that. I just remember liking that, right?
Mm.
And that followed me through. I still had my artistic bent, so I was like, oh, maybe I'll do architecture because it's kind of mathematical a little bit. But I realized after I started the architecture program in college that I did not like the busy work of art training, right? I didn't like sitting there with, a bunch of uh back in the day, I don't know what they do these days. Probably they do everything on an iPad or whatever. But, here's these cardboard, all this card stock that you're carrying around, making all kinds of designs and submitting it and all that kind of stuff. Um, Very interesting. That's probably why I don't seem to have developed the discipline for that kind of thing. Probably why I don't read music or something like that, even though I probably should learn how to, and all that kind of stuff. So I backed out of that, and I somehow realized that the more value will be in me knowing, because let me state something there. In addition to not really being down for that kind of quote unquote discipline, I knew somehow that in architecture you're going to make your name through marketing more so than rather than in engineering, where it's engineering. I mean, I was thinking rather one dimensionally, but engineering is like, okay, you know your stuff, and that's it, right? You just know your stuff, and you're going to be valuable. Plus, more people don't want to do it, hence it's rarer, and economic value comes from rarity, not utility. Right? Water is very useful, for example, but it's not rare, so it's not expensive. But diamonds are practically useless, right? But anyways, I then shifted to engineering.
Especially blood diamonds.
Be-
Yeah,
exactly. People are dying over some useless stuff because it's rare. So that was my thinking when I shifted into engineering. I graduated around 2008. I started working around 2006 as interning and doing other things like that. The market fell in 2008. We all remember that one, especially the construction industry got hit pretty hard. So I went back, got my master's degree, and got my professional licenses. All that process is a long story of how that works. But once after I got my professional license, I then started the Prometheus Engineering while I was actually still working an engineering gig. And that's how you get your license anyways, is by working an engineering gig. So your question was, how long have I been in business? As I said, 2014 is when I started Prometheus Engineering. Just give you the backstory of how I got into the engineering thing, because I've always had curiosity, had creativity. Discipline was if I were three things I've got is curiosity, creativity, and discipline. And the creativity we might get into a little bit, because I think that part has to also do with what I term as confidence, in the sense that I always have the disposition that you can find a solution to something. And that comes from creativity, because um, intuition is really what I'm describing here. Creativity, blah blah blah. But when you can, and we actually did a topic on creativity on this very show, I believe. Is this back in the day there was a couple of shows where we focused on creativity, and one of the things that we kind of narrowed down as the definition of creativity is being able to think in fundaments, right? The fundamentals of stuff. That way you can draw connections between things. You can see the connection between an economic phenomenon over here and particle physics, maybe, and then maybe you draw some kind of connection between them, create some new relationship in an equation, and that'll be a new leap in one of the fields, right? So that'll be a creativity. But if you're not thinking fundamentally, you cannot see these underlying connections between things. But when you're thinking fundamentally and seeing underlying connections between things, you develop a habit of, there must be a way around something, right? Because it's like it's you don't see 10,000 things. You see maybe about 5 things in everything. And you're like, there's got to be a way of wrapping my mind around it conceptually somehow to be able to get to a solution. But anyways, I've gone on and on. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, this is good. It's good to get an idea. Now, one thing that I've noted is, though I had a general idea of what it was that I wanted to do, I wanted it to be music. The specifics of my journey were not known to me. It's very hazy. So one thing I've talked to my students about frequently is just this idea of gaining general skills that can sort of be repurposed, or that can be utilized for whatever it is that you find yourself doing. Is there an aspect of that in your journey? These sort of skills that you described, engineering, creativity, the discipline, the interest in architecture. Were there Are there aspects of those things that you had sort of some raw kind of stuff there? You knew you wanted to utilize that. You weren't necessarily 100% sure how that stuff was going to express itself. And as things sort of developed, then you started to see things emerge. And voila, here are all these useful things sitting around for me to do these tasks.
Wow, that's a very good question. And by the way, there's some people that's an American thing to say. By the way, that's a good question, right? And uh, some Europeans don't like when it's like, why do Americans say that's a good question when you know the reasons why people say that. There's several reasons, most of which have to do with your stalling, right? When someone says, "Ah, that's a good question," it means the most generous version of it is, oh, it's actually a question that it doesn't have a ready answer in my head. That's why it's a good question, because I actually have to think, right? That's the impulse
Right.
people have when they go, that's a good question. I mean, while they're thinking. So the curiosity aspect, I said that there's a curiosity, there's creativity, and then there's discipline. The first two were more natural. They came first, especially the curiosity. And this is with the benefit of hindsight. When you're just curious, or when you're just kind of intuitive slash creative slash whatever, you don't really think about it. That's just how you operate in the world, right? But when you look back, you can kind of, with the benefit of hindsight, you can kind of chart some things there. But the curiosity aspect has a lot to do with what you're talking about. In other words, curious about many different things, and then seeing the interrelatedness of these different things. And as a result, I always kind of knew that um, different things will connect, right? So I never had this issue of like, oh, I went to engineering school and then now I don't like engineering, so now I'm going to go to real estate. It's like, once I pick that engineering track, I know, okay, this is a particular track I'm going to build. I'm going to build as much as I can on this music plane, because why not? I'm going to build as much as I can on these other side intellectual pursuits that I do, because why not? And I know that they'll all kind of intersect. So I pursue each of these with the same amount of seriousness, whether it's the my love of the economics in general, um, business cycles, macroeconomics, or what have you, investment and all that kind of stuff. It's not because, oh, I don't like engineering more anymore, I want to go become an investment banker. It's like, no, all these things to me, I call it kind of riding these chaos waves, and they will at some point, you're like, that one particular wave that I created over here will be best right now. It'll actually form, because I'm thinking of constructive and destructive wave patterns. Waves can either form to destroy each other, like two water waves coming together and they destroy each other, or they actually add to each other. So you take, oh, my musical abilities here, or musical connections, or whatever I've been compounding in the musical area, can be brought to bear in terms of my ability to present sales stuff, being able to talk in front of a crowd. So I've always had that notion that all these different skills are interrelated, because, and I naturally developed a curiosity for learning all these different things, because that's just kind of who I am. But luckily, I was never in that place where it's like, oh, I've picked engineering now, so my whole world is engineering, or if I get disillusioned with engineering now, I gotta pick something else. And it's like, no, you do all these things together, and they will all compound on each other if you know how to use the right thing when. And this, a lot of this has to do with the intuitive mindset, which uh, is a little bit more okay with some chaos, because you understand that that's how the world works. I'm not trying to arrange the world into a box. It's like, it just let it happen, let it flow. So I'm not sure how well that answers your question. If I understood your question correctly, it's like, okay, well, how did you view all these different skills as being important without necessarily knowing where the destination was going to be? And yes, 100% curious about all these different things, know fully well that you pick a track, you develop the track, you never abandon a track, you never completely abandon a track. No, don't do it. Like, it's so, and because you can then combine it all. And I give the example of, hey, I did the music thing, do the frontman thing for a band, even as an introvert. That greatly then helped me in the, whether it's YouTube now, but definitely in the sales thing. One of my superpowers is presenting in front of a group of people, and a lot of that came from my studying how to present at a bar, at a dive bar in LA somewhere. So yes, 100%. I do have the notion of having these disparate skills, not having a clear definition of where you're going. It's kind of hazy, but don't worry. Keep all these tracks going. Keep all these waves going. They will come together in an interfere in a uh, constructive manner at some point. And it's not
Yep.
all just kind of, if I've just said, like, it's not just all just kind of like, oh, happenstance, though. There is some thinking, when you decide to combine this wave with this other wave. It's not just happenstance.
Right. Right. Yeah. There's this illustration that I sometimes use when I'm talking about um, getting closer to your to your destiny. I don't like words like that. Uh, Probably for the same reason that you don't like words like that. Anyhow, because the reason I don't like the terms like destiny is because in some way it seems to abstract the responsibility for getting there by representing it as some sort of mystical thing. There's a lot of like real, deliberate, particular steps, logistics that you have to deal with. One of the things that you did is you got a master's degree. When the market started tanking, you said, "Hey, let me get another degree." And one thing that I did is, though, I tell folks this and they don't believe me. I didn't really, I don't. I didn't really like school. I mean, I saw it as a necessary. I saw it like, okay, I'm doing this thing. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy, playing the music. If I do ever want to do like the professor thing, then I'm gonna have to have the requisite degrees, and they're offering me money. Okay, let me go. Let's go. So it's not always doing stuff because you are so just in love with the idea of it and all that. It's not always that. It's like, hey, it's very, what's the word? It's very utilitarian, very pragmatic. It's these are the tools that are necessary to be in the game. So if you want to be in the game, you got to have these tools. So anyhow, but I use this
Yeah,
illustration. Go ahead.
that determinism of destiny, by the way, yeah, I don't necessarily like it, even though, you know, at the highest heights of complementarity of thinking, of looking at the block universe, yes, you could just one could be philosophically deterministic in that way, but not
Well, it's very
in your yeah.
yeah. It's very much but it's very much like the what is it? Hawking and the famous quote. What is it? He says he's talking about what is it? Is it about determinism? Is it predeterminism? What is it? Uh,
Steve Hawking, a particular Hawking quote about
yeah,
determinism. Not
yeah. He's the question is. Um, I don't want to. I don't want to botch it. Let me find the quote.
yeah. Go ahead and find it while I concur with your determinism talk. Like on the level of your life, okay, your life and the actions that you have to take. There's a lot of serendipity, a lot of things that will happen where you need to pivot. Right. Let's say you're starting a business, for example. Okay, you have an idea of the business. The minute you get your first customer, you're going to need to pivot. The feedback from your first customer, that is, right? And they say, hey, it's too expensive. You can't be like, oh no, it's not too expensive. This is the best ingredients. Like, guys, like, look, there's a restaurant next door that can give it to me for cheaper. Then you have to go back to the drawing board and be like, what do I have to change? Okay, I have to change something about the storage, the distribution. Maybe I can't be just serving individuals. Maybe I have to serve groups. If I'm delivering food, for example, like, okay, on Wednesdays, maybe I have to reduce the menus, right? So that I can specialize, increase efficiency, all this kind of stuff, right? It's not your destiny to have this kind of restaurant, okay? It's your
Right,
destiny.
right, right,
Or,
right,
you simply get in there and you just stop left, right, dock, move, right, bob, weave. Oh, that's what you do in life.
right, right. So the quote uh, is everything determined? The answer is yes, it is, but it might as well not be because we can never know what is determined. So, regardless as to what if you we can have these abstract conversations, big picture, you know, sort of conversations, and then yes, we can talk about, hey, well, it seems like that's quite fortuitous, and you can kind of see in the hand of God, guiding. I mean, all that, yeah. I mean, I'm not against that. I have a particular worldview that accommodates that idea. However, when you're in it, that stuff don't matter. You don't. I mean, what You don't know what that stuff is anyway. So you got to try hard and do what you're supposed to do. Get in there, get this extra degree if if you're going to need it or not. You don't know if you're going to need it or not. You better get it happening. Um, but one thing, this idea of like as you're on your journey, it's like you're on this foggy road, and you only can see like far enough in front of you so that you're not like tripping over stuff, right? But you don't see well enough to actually know what's happening way down the street, yeah, way down the road, the pathway. If there's is even a pathway or street, might be a dead end. You might be walking, over the cliff, and yeah. So I mean, so you don't see far enough to know that, and it's better that way. It's better that way because if you actually knew where you're going to get to, it would take some of the the romance and it would take some of that out of it. It would take some of the not knowing what's going to happen. You want to have a general idea, but you don't want it to be spelled out, letter by letter. That's gonna, oh my goodness, that would be like a terrible curse to like know what's going to happen, before it happens all the time. No, that's so getting used to being sort of on your journey, not kind of knowing where you're going and just able to have enough flexibility to make the decision when you need to make the decision. It seems to me that's that spice of life and all that mess. That
Yeah, and
seems like
it's
that's what it is.
necessary for success as well. It's 100% necessary for success. The little thing I described about the restaurant, uh, that's the first pivot that restaurant did. But the whole life of the restaurant, if it's successful, will be pivot after pivot after pivot after pivot. There is no, oh, and I'm coasting. No.
Yeah. And even in my stage of my career now, that's still happening. I think people think. I mean, I have tenure, but my stuff is still all moving around and all kind of stuff. There's all kinds of stuff changing all the time. That's just the nature. That's the nature of it. Now, I'm fortunate to have the kind of position where I have job security. However, that doesn't mean that it's going to be the same thing. Doesn't mean that you can start coasting. A lot of people do coast, but that also they also pay for that coasting. Okay, so in your business, when you're thinking about the idea of expanding, now you've already mentioned something that's a big point, and that is stuff is going to keep changing. You're going to have to keep rolling with the punches, and you don't know what it is that you got, and all of this. You mentioned that. In your ideas about expanding your business, what are some of the main considerations in how you don't have to give all the trade secrets, but not that anyone is see the trade secrets thing is funny because you can practically tell everybody exactly what you do and nobody will do it because they're too lazy. Yeah, or too impatient, or they think it's supposed to just romantically, oh boof, oh yeah, it's happening. Oh, I didn't even have to do anything. It was like a dream. They that's what they want. They want some freaking stuff like that. But if you tell them actually, dude, you need to do this and do this and do this, they're not going to do any of that stuff. Go ahead, man.
So, when it comes to expanding, what are some of the fundamentals? You never said fundamental, but I always want to answer the fundamentals because
that's the question.
So if I were to give some context to it, a lot of entrepreneurs are what they call solopreneurs, right? And they just created a job for themselves, which can be great. Like you're your own boss, you create a job for yourself, you get the money, you are in a different tax bracket or different tax regime, you're doing 1099 stuff or whatever, as opposed to getting a W-2. So it's good for you and you're fine. But that's not a business. Okay. A business needs to be independent, right? In the sense that you need to be able to sell it, right? Can you just sell it and go to Hawaii? Is it, or is it tied to the hip? Is the whole operations tied to the hip? The clients, have only come from you and they know you. They don't know your business really. They just know you. So there's no brand. I say that to say this, that a lot of and many businesses, with the dentistries and all that kind of stuff, many businesses stay at that level. The next level that you need to get to is to become independent in terms of the operations and the branding, right? So it's not just, hey, these clients know Ike, is no, they know Prometheus Engineering, right? So that is the goal, that is the challenge. Then you can start imagining, okay, how do you bridge this gap here? Okay, and this is just one aspect of expanding, but I think it's rather fundamental in the sense that, making an independent business, the concept there is, can I sell it to somebody, or and it continues to operate, or is it just completely tied to me? So one of the aspects is to do this branding thing that I'm talking about here, right? Which is start to introduce the clients to the brand and to introduce the clients to other people. Like, let's say, for example, rather than you're going to be the top salesperson if you're the CEO, that's not a problem. It's fine, right? It's fine. And I'll talk about a little bit about the operations aspect. But if you're just talking about, let's say you're the top salesperson because you started the business, and your top clients, the project executives and the CEOs of other companies whom are your clients, they know you. What you start doing is you find a star amongst your employees. First of all, you got to cross the employee phase, right? In other words, you can't be just solos, Let's say you've crossed the employee phase. And by the way, there are ways to do that now where, given the remote work situation and the fact that you can hire people from overseas, and rather than sending them a 1099 or W2, which will be in the United States here, is something called a W8 Ben, W8 beneficiary, whatever. That is for international employees. So you get an international employee or a local, whatever it is, you find a star amongst that group of employees, or maybe it's just one or two, but you're grooming somebody. You're grooming, I heard, is a bad word these days, but anyways, you're grooming someone to, let's say it's an engineer, and then you're adding project management type responsibilities to them. So what you're going to do is, okay, you're going to invite these people to some of the meetings, right? Or more and more meetings, right? And you're going to be telling these clients, hey, your next time you need something, email Israel, shoot an email to Ayan, right? You don't have to email me, okay? You do these kinds of things. So you're simultaneously training these people to be able to operate independently from you, and you're introducing the clients to your team, and you're using the Prometheus Engineering thing. Or, you're talking about we more. Okay, now I'm getting a little bit into the weeds here, but if we recall, what we're trying to do is we're trying to work ourselves out of a job, right? And this job is this job we created from ourselves, and we created the business. Now we want it to be a little independent. So there's the branding aspect, and then there's the independence of the people reaching out to these other people here. And then you have a operating philosophy. And this is about growing, right? This is about expanding, going to the next level. A lot of times, some people, in order to grow, they think, okay, I need an operations manager. That's typically what people get to. You're like, invoices coming in, and this and that, and I don't know, whatever. How do I handle finance? Blah blah blah. Let me get an operations manager. You don't necessarily have to do that. What you need is an operating philosophy. You need an operating system, okay? And then maybe you need a manager to manage it, or maybe you don't need a manager to manage it. But the operating system makes it such that there is a cadence and there's a predictability that has nothing to do with you, right? Okay.
Right.
And I don't have to get into the weeds about that, but if you have a business, you understand that, generally speaking, well, let me talk about business in general. Business in general has the brand marketing and branding aspect, okay? And then there's the sales aspect, okay? And then there is the finance aspect. at least. Okay, then there's something called operations, but we're removing them out right now because operations is just what keeps all these things in sync, the cadence, right? So you can create a system where it's like, okay, cool. Every year we need to have some kind of a marketing event, some kind of a branding thing. Maybe we come up with a new item in the menu. We create a new tool. We add a new feature in the app. Whatever it is, right? A marketing event. This then gives the salespeople, which are and marketing that marketing event thing. Maybe that's measured in like every 6 months or something. It gives the salespeople something to then go out and sell with, and they're measured every quarter. And then the finance team, maybe it's a yearly thing, okay, and also the employees have a yearly kind of a review. These kinds of things I'm talking about, these calendar type of events that always happen, where it's like every year the branding or marketing. And this marketing, it doesn't necessarily have to be a team yet. Even it could just be a bunch of freelancers that you. But that's what I'm talking about, an operating philosophy, an operating system. So it can be abstracted from even having individuals in there right now. But there's a system that says that every year you have to come up with some kind of a marketing kind of thing that gives your salespeople something to go to the market with. They're measured every quarter. This quarterly cadence gives you the financing aspect of your business, because financing basically is the money market. What do we do with the money we have in terms of growing or whatever, and do we borrow money? What's the cost of capital? Is it
The,
time to grow? Is it time to kind of step back? So the cadence of the sales will then give the finance people some kind of predictability. So if you have these things orchestrated and dancing well together, this also then lends to the independence. Ultimately, you want the independence of the operations of the business and the independence of branding. This is how you get to the next level. A lot of people stay stuck and just like, oh, I'm making good money. It's kind of fine. And they never work this aspect of, I need to create something that's independent so that I can step away from it, even if you don't want to step away from it. But um, I don't know. Maybe it's just the creative. I find it to be well. Let me state the pragmatic utilitarian aspect, which has already been restated over and over again. It's not a business until you can sell it to somebody. It's not a business until you can step away from it, go to Hawaii, and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of like the pragmatic aspect of it. You want to create an entity, but there's something also just interesting to me about creating these systems, about divorcing yourself a little bit from it, and having a big picture view. And you don't need to hire people to solve all these problems. You can actually just create the systems yourself and operate create the cadence for them. A lot of stuff is about cadence. A lot of stuff is about predictability. Okay, that's what makes a business, right? You talked about the predictability of your job, for example, in terms of the job security. That's a great thing. A lot of the world of finance and business works that way because you have job security and you have this paycheck coming in. You can make projections. That's the financial projections, right? Your finance department, Dr. Thunder finance department, can make projections. It can say, you know what, I think I can afford this house with this mortgage for this long, blah blah blah. That's because it has a cadence, right? So for a business, you have to create that cadence where you're like, okay, hire a sales team, right, or some kind of either pure commission sales, whatever. Start measuring that kind of increase quarterly. See the cadence build. Understand the flow of the income. Understand the outflow. Understand the kind of financial predictions that you can make. Create an independent brand. Introduce your clients to the team, to the brand, and just keep on repeating, repeating, repeating. Obviously there's still going to be an aspect that's going to be completely very, very well tied to you. Oh, Steve Jobs leaves Apple, will Apple survive, that kind of a thing, right? That's inevitable, but you want to, as much as possible, create that separation. You're not going to expand if you don't do that.
yeah, these are all good points. Now, this strategizing that you're talking about, marketing and sales and getting this dance, does that need to take place at a staff retreat?
No, as a matter of fact, it does not need to take. You don't have to go into now marketing is the only place where I think that it's necessary to have events, and that's the events for, and not all businesses, right? But and it's events for, like, let's say a press release is what I'm talking about, right? Like you have a, oh, we're releasing a new, yeah, I think Microsoft just did it recently with ChatGPT, right? Or I just mentioned Steve Jobs, right? They go out, they stand in front of there, and they pull out an iPhone out of their pocket, or they pull out the iPad, or that kind of a thing. I find, the theatrics to be important only in
Yeah.
marketing and branding, right?
Right.
That's the only place where you really need to have it. What good employees appreciate is training, really. Um, I find, right, good training where you're constantly, keeping them updated and forcing them to update their stuff, right? So part of the
Mhm.
cadence I mentioned is, a yearly review for these people, right? So there's going to be a yearly kind of target of how they need to improve, a yearly review where they get a raise, and also perhaps training. There's training all through the year, but I also have this kind of there's some that in engineering, there's these courses you can take, continuing education, in order to maintain your license if you're a licensed engineer. I actually have my staff take those courses. You watch a few videos, you take a test. It's not that crazy, right? They're each about an hour of videos, right? And it's not all, it's not like every month or something like that. It's a year. Over the year, you need to have completed 6 hours of whatever, right? Including the regular training that we're doing on the job. This gives them a particular kind of pattern and a cadence or whatever. I think employees appreciate that. You don't have to take them to Hawaii or whatever.
Okay, so
But you know what?
go ahead.
There is, you're talking about expansion, right?
Yes.
Having said all that I just said, distribution is one of the most important things when it comes to expansion, right? Expansion is distribution, right? It's like,
Right.
oh,
Right.
the music business, right? Well, what's the distribution? The distribution deal. That word distribution is huge. Um, the book business, whatever kind of business you're in. So Amazon is your distribution, for example. Some other kind of platform like the Apple App Store is distribution. YouTube is distribution, right? Whatever we talked about that restaurant earlier about, they said, people are saying, hey, it's too expensive. The delivery system is their distribution. How do they hook up to some kind of distribution? The distribution hack is something you have to overcome as well. Maybe I'll touch upon it later as it relates to some other question you're going to ask. But I just had to mention that with regards to expansion. I mentioned the separation of yourself and all that kind of stuff, where you create an independent entity and all the dance that goes on with that. But there's a distribution hack. How do I get into the market? How do I reach out there? Distribution, get my app, my music, or word of my services out there is a hack that you have to kind of deal with in order to expand, for sure.
Well, why don't you go ahead and talk about that if you want to go into some detail about this
Okay.
distribution hack.
So a distribution hack, I'm going to give an example from someone else's business, and then I'm going to give an example from my business. So I believe it was, um, so PayPal, for example, when they started, one of their distribution hacks was to just pay people to recommend other people, right? And also they kind of they parasitically bound themselves to eBay. Okay, so eBay existed. eBay, people are selling things to each other, and PayPal. This is something that you can. The technology is I can send money via email, and they found already an existing network. There's a network of people selling stuff. Okay, and then they use that network, right, to distribute themselves, where they were allowing clients to put this PayPal logo in their ads. I'm selling a X, and here's PayPal, right? And people are like, what's this PayPal thing? And meanwhile, also they're saying we'll pay you money, and they lost a lot of money, but they were able to raise money, right? This is the part of the whole finance thing again, right? They were able to raise money to pay people to lose money in order to get this network. Because once you have the network effects are really strong and they're difficult to break, very difficult to break, right? And it's responsible for example, why Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley, right? Or why there's certain hubs. Why is Nashville Nashville? It's a network thing, right? It's not magic. It's not in the water. It's not. It's just once you have a network already built, it's hard to break, right? So That is a way that one way that a certain company did a distribution thing. So if you're in a business like my business, for example, you're in a service business, you're an architect, you're an engineer, you're an accountant. How do I become like a Deloitte, right? How do I get my tentacles all over the world like that? Now, there are certain hacks that you can, and the reason I say hack is because it's not, there's not a menu, it's not written somewhere where you're just like, oh, you go pick, you have to figure out something, right? The eBay thing was that, oh, they figured that out, or they stumbled upon it and then they pivoted and they dove in and they milked it, that kind of a thing. So you have to find something, dive on it, grab onto it, milk it. One thing that you can do, what I do actually in my industry is, okay, so there's people, I'm in the construction industry. So you ask yourself, what industry am I in? Just like PayPal knew that they were in the payments industry. What networks already exist in that industry? Not network as you know, I'm going to go some silly networking event, but actual network of transaction, right? Network of actual transactions can I embed myself in? So I'm like, okay, cool. What some engineers do, not a lot of engineers do it, and again, I can say it, they're not going to still do it, okay, is you hook yourself up with a manufacturing company and its network. So I'm designing buildings, right? Or I'm designing whatever I design. Okay, that's kind of my thing. I am in a network. I hook up with a particular manufacturing company and I say, hey, I want to be a distributor of your stuff. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or in my case, what I'm doing is I sell construction equipment, high end construction equipment. That's why I get to the high end people. Left to my own devices, there's no way or I wouldn't say there's no way, but the hack that I used allowed me to accelerate my ability to reach people like Amazon and Google and talk to the biggest electrical companies, the biggest mechanical contractors, be in some of the biggest water treatment facilities all over the place. Why? Because I'm using the branding, okay, and the distribution network of a high end construction equipment manufacturer that says, hey, here you go, Ike, go sell our stuff. Okay. So that puts me in front of these people whom I'm selling construction equipment to, but they also need engineering services. So that door, that barrier gets broken down by the fact that I'm coming in with a nice big brand, with a nice whatever, right? So I have there's somebody else who's for support engineering out here or out there in the Bay Area as well. He started his engineering company. We used to work at the same company called ISAT, and then we both started our own company. He did something similar, and there's another guy, a black guy, by the way, um, Marcus Odin. He's got Fortress Engineering, and he hooked up with this distributor, AECOM. Uh, it's not actually called AECOM. I forget. Acme, yeah, Acme, the popular. He hooked up with them to say, hey, I can sell, I can specify, because there's a lot of different ways that you guys can help each other. The engineer gets to specify things that he designs. Like I can say, okay, use Dr. Thunder's 2x4s for these things, right? Right. And I can go to you, Dr. Thunder, and say, hey, I can specify in my designs your 2x4s if I get a cut from that kind of a thing. Okay. And then boom.
Right.
And now the manufacturer of these 2x4s can then market themselves as also having an engineering service associated with them, right?
Right.
You're going to be
Right.
getting a lot of it helps them to be able to, because people come in, they want to buy a 2x4 and they're like, oh, will you design this for me too? And they're like, yeah, we got a guy, right? That's your distribution hack, right?
Right.
I'm doing similar in the sense that I'm selling stuff, okay, and I get my nice little cut from the sales there. But the main thing is that it gives me access to all these people and good distribution, go far and wide because the company is a global company. That is the distribution hack that I see being used in this in engineering slash architecture. And it's novel and it's interesting. Not a lot of people do it, as I said, but the idea here is you hook yourself to an established network, whether it's PayPal hooking itself to the eBay network, and then where actual transactions are taking place, you embed yourself in there. There's a value for value. eBay ended up buying PayPal by the way. So there was already value. They saw the value in there. So eBay didn't squash PayPal because they knew that, hey, these people are helping lubricate our process. So find an existing network is a good little distribution hack, and get in there and yeah.
Yeah. Um, that's interesting. It seems somewhat analogous to a pretty natural way that musicians sort of get their name out there. So you get associated with a particular band that has a big name, and then eventually you can go out on your own, right? And now you've been endorsed by the band, and then now the band can also say, "Hey, they used to play in our band," So you have multiple ways that benefits, and obviously doing the job, providing the actual service. So we needed somebody to play saxophone in the band, so they're getting that also. You're getting paid for working with them, but then you're also getting some more sort of credibility, probably getting your foot in some venues that you wouldn't have been able to get into. If you're smart, you try to, without undercutting the band, you try to create, some relationships with the people that are booking, and they're familiar with you because they remember seeing you with this other band, and now you have an easier way to get into the venue. So it's remarkable how similar all of this stuff operates.
Indeed, indeed. It's I mean, distribution is key, right? The outreach is key. And I think that naturally we find ourselves, even if we're not thinking about it, we find ourselves like, well, who has distribution? Because typically the people who have distributions are the big people, and you want to be associated with the big people. They're the ones that are going to pay you money anyways. But if you're smart enough, as you said, you're going to be like, while I'm here, while they allowed me into this big door with their brand that I'm associated with, I can find a way to kind of create some synergy here for myself.
Yeah, and it's some of that is tricky too, because I work with a lot of folks, and there's certain people that I work with a lot. They call me for a lot of gigs. I've made a lot of money, working with them, and
Hmm.
you have to be careful how you try to have a conversation with whoever booked them. You got to be careful because, in a matter of speaking, you're not there representing yourself, you're representing them. That's why they keep calling you. So then you have to kind of
Hmm.
you got to be nuanced, and you can't just right in front of the guy, hey, I got a band, we could play for less than this, and
Oh man.
and plus, say for instance, it's like a trumpet player or something that this book, it's his gig, and you're on for the ride. Oh, plus you should hear my trumpet player. He's so great. this guy's standing right here, you know. So, well, I'll tell you,
That yeah, that is a big thing.
you'd be
The
surprised, but
conflict
you'd
of
be
interest.
surprised. Yeah. But you'd be surprised how often newbies do that. I mean, it seems like it would just be like, dude, it's like you're taking food out of your own mouth right now. What are you doing? go go ahead, man.
It, so the conflict of interest is always an issue with this distribution model that I just described, and that you also are describing in a different industry.
Yeah.
And so, you gotta one be bold enough. You have to have a certain appetite for risk. That is the name of the game, anyways, right? Yeah, risk is part of the thing. Comes with the territory. Certain appetite for risk to do that kind of thing, and you have to have the subtlety to know how to do it, and then you have to then bring value such that you're stuck. uh, PayPal got stuck to eBay. eBay didn't like him initially, thought of him as a parasite. Here's the same group, one of the guys, David Sachs, part of the original PayPal mafia with Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and the rest of them, started Yammer as well. This guy's like a triple billion-dollar company starter. Okay. And there are a few people like that, and which gets us to the whole thing about people talking to, well, it's not directly, but the idea of there is a skill, and there are habits, skills that people develop. It's not just all luck, let's say, is what I'm getting at, right? Otherwise, there will not be these people that keep on doing things over and over again. People like to hate on them. People are like, no, it's just whatever. But nah, trust me, they know what they're doing. That's why they're doing it. Okay. Now, this guy
Yeah.
also started Yammer, and what he did in Yammer was he was one of the first people to get into. They call it, so generally speaking, when you have a software in an enterprise, it's called enterprise software, like Microsoft or something like that. It's top down, where the IT person is whom is getting sold to. You go to the CTO, chief technical officer, or whatever, and you sell them your enterprise software. Okay, and they say yay or nay or whatever, right? What these guys did is they were selling, or actually, because you don't really sell these things, is you build a network and then you monetize the network. Is what Yammer did, and then sold it to Microsoft for $1 billion, right? It's what they sold, ended up selling it, Yammer, to Microsoft. Is they were selling it to individual employees. Like they were like, hey, uh, here's this kind of a social network for business, right?
Mm.
Invite your friends, right? And they did in terms of the distribution hack, they did something similar to LinkedIn, where it's like, if you remember when LinkedIn started, it was like you kind of create your own network. You invite people, you send out emails to, they actually have, they hacked into your system, right? They saw all these emails of all these people, and they're like, oh, you want to invite these people, and you just click, right? Click, 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 and people are like, oh, now you create these networks. So basically, they created these networks using the at at Dr. Thunder music, whatever. Like, oh, all these people in here have at Dr. Thunder music. Is this person part of your team? Is this person part of your team? Blah blah blah. So they kind of click, 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 distributed within the company, right? And then and then they're like, hey, then they went to the CTO and say, hey, all these people are already using Yammer. Do you want to control it? I use that. I'm saying this because there's an aspect of being parasitic, because we are talking about that conflict of interest thing. But then if you get in there, right, and you create enough value, you become undeniable, and they're just like, yeah, screw it. Let's. And then it created a revolution. It's called, software as a service, where now there are lots of software that, and the cloud also helped this, by the way, because before you would give the software to the chief technical officer, they would install it in their little mainframe, and that's how it worked, right? But now it's in the cloud, so I can sell to your individual employees, and that created a big revolution in many other companies, such as Adobe and the Photoshop people, right? That now are able to, a big part of their enterprise business has now become a question of selling to individual seats, they like to call it, in a company, right? So you can sell to
Yeah.
individual employees, as opposed to, and all the individual employees has to tell the purchasing department, say, hey, I need Adobe. Okay, cool. You buy, there's a budget for Adobe. You get it. We don't have to deal with the chief technical officer. It doesn't have to be in our server. We don't have to worry about security and any of that. But this was prior to this, and they were one of the first to do that kind of distribution thing, get in there. There was a little bit of conflict of interest, infiltrating other people's organizations and whatnot, but then they were undeniable. He repeated the same thing that he did basically with the eBay PayPal thing, right? So, anyways, just wanted to.
Yeah. So this is interesting too, because one of the things that they really grill the the noobs. They really grill the noobs on following all the rules, no conflict of interest, no X, Y, and Z, all this other stuff. But disproportionately, in a very high percentage, the folks that are able to get to the next level and hit it big, as it were, they ignored all those rules. So they're simultaneously telling you to follow all the rules, do what you're supposed to do, follow protocol, They give you the smackdown when you don't when you get caught, leapfrogging. You were supposed to talk to your supervisor before you said something. That's out of protocol. You're not supposed to be leapfrogging to the top. Just because the president of the institution asked you a question, you were supposed to come and ask me if it was okay for you to talk to him. There's all this kind of goofy stuff. But the guys that actually make it and end up making these, climbs in organizations and then leave organization for more money and all this, they were like, screw all those rules. I'm not doing any of that stuff. That is for you noobs and for you suckers. I'm I'm about getting the money. I'm chasing the bag. I don't care whose feathers I ruffle on the way to the bag. Um,
You
and
see,
it's
George
go ahead.
Orwell. I'm sorry. George Orwell talked about this a while ago, and obviously, he was not the first. I'm sure Marx and Engels also kind of envisioned. It's about entrepreneurial capitalism versus managerial capitalism. Okay, the
Mm.
entrepreneurial capitalism is the guy that says, "Okay, I'm breaking the rules, bro." Right? The managerial capitalism, which obviously is going to be more of them, right? Like the organization is filled with the manager types. They like things to be static and predictable. Um, I like to hate on them a little bit because they're like, "What the hell? What are you useful for here?" And you just like whatever, like blindly following rules. Not really. If I let you out in the wild, what could you possibly do? Right? You don't have any. You ain't got no game or whatever. I don't know. You're
Right,
lame.
right.
That's the idea here. That the entrepreneurial capitalist is going to be breaking all the rules. We have all the examples of Airbnb or Uber or whatever, right? Over and over and over again. And then we have Elon Musk out there is a great example of entrepreneurial capitalism versus managerial capitalism. The managerial class was screaming at when he took over yeah, Twitter, right? Why were they so why? Because part of it, people were like, "Oh, is it a left versus right thing?" Not so clearly, because is Elon Musk particularly right? No, he's just an entrepreneur. I know that
Yeah.
the entrepreneur thing doesn't necessarily fall cleanly between left and right, even though people may want to make it seem like it is. But really, what's going on here is it's capitalism. It's capitalism on both sides, but there's a big difference between the entrepreneurial capitalism, the John Galt, shout out to Ayn Rand type thing, versus the managerial stuff. And the managerial stuff, I would argue, is when things start to get stale, and then you need somebody to come in and break it up again. If you stay stuck at the managerial stuff, that's 1984 land. It's just, it's just gray suits and follow the rules, and it's not a good place. And that is why, by the way, the woke ideology. Okay, and this is now this is a I'm making some tenuous connections, a hypothesis that may not be completely correct, but I think that the reason why the woke ideology is very strong with the managerial class is because they like groupthink, right? They don't like to deviate, right? It is almost like in their DNA that we follow the rules with the paperwork, we
Yeah,
follow the rules with the zeitgeist. Yep.
yeah, and they like control. See, the woke
Yes,
stuff gives
exactly.
you expands your authority. It gives you
Hmm.
more stuff that you can tell people. You can do this, you can't do that. You need to say it this way, you can't say it that way. You need to ask me first before this. You need to ask this person what, all of this junk. They love all of that extra stuff because it gives them more power. And uh and
100%.
uh um and you know uh you know see, the thing about more power. See, I said that, I said that, and it probably sounds pejorative, right? Like they want more power. Well, everybody wants more power. Okay, so that is the issue of wanting more power. That isn't the issue. The issue is
Yeah.
how you go about acquiring it.
Hmm.
That's the issue that I have, right? So, and it's interesting, and this is a bit of a tangent, but you mentioned Elon Musk, and you said he's not really a lefty. Oh, I'm sorry, he's not really. How did you describe him?
It's not
He's
really
not
a
really
man
on
of
the
the right per se or a
no. That's what
conservative.
that's right, right, right. He's not really on the right, which is interesting. This is an interesting point that you make.
Mm-hmm. And the
People
thing
like
about it is
him.
because
You got
I'm
it.
sorry. So again, one of the things I like to look at, generally speaking, I always like to look at the fundamental stuff, right? But also when it comes to a lot of political trends or trends that happen in journalism, what people write, what people say, and I include in journalism even scholarly works and stuff like that. The zeitgeist and the politics and all that kind of stuff. I like to look at the materialist economic drivers of those things. And at a certain level, it might seem like it's like a dry thing. Like, oh, what do you mean is it driving? Is it? But no, but when you go down deep enough, again, you find something more interesting philosophically, such as the managerial class versus the entrepreneurial class. It's like, that's interesting. That explains more, right? More than just, oh, these people are leftists. It's like, no. It's, well, that's happening, but we're talking about a system, right? We're talking about a system. We're talking about all these things moving together. And when you got to describe the system, you're not going to be looking at the individual molecules of water. If you want to describe the general flow of things, you're going to be looking at something else. Like, oh, it's because of this slope here. Okay, that's why those molecules are doing that stuff. Okay, and there's some molecules that, yes, they love doing that slope, but there's some that just can't help doing it because of this slope, right? So the slope in this case will be, for an Elon, they don't want this kind of staleness, this kind of over control, this kind of simplistic one track mind type stuff. It's not in their quote unquote DNA. But for this other group, the managerial class, whom comes in to manage the capitalism, because again, they're freaking capitalists. That's it's important. It's not like Twitter is like a bunch of socialists, dude. It's like, no, they're out there enjoying their capitalist lifestyle 100%. But it's that managerial thing that gets in there, and then they get this kind of groupthink thing, and then they latch on to whatever it tends to be zeitgeisty. And it tends to be that the zeitgeist is controlled by what is typically called the left from an academic standpoint.
Yep.
And then you can see the kind of thing I'm piecing together here. That's kind of how the thing rolls. But I tend to think, though, that when it comes to the movement of history, these material incentives, bread and butter incentives, and the class that people fall into when it comes to the operating machinery of an economy is really what's causally important. Not that what I would call surface level words, the writings of somebody in some university, the policy propositions of some politician, the video on TikTok by some woke person. Not that those things don't matter, but not causally, and it's a hypothesis again, right? I don't think they're causally as important as these other things that are going on here, materially and economically. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Um, it's interesting too because we have this view of who we think is going to be down for the woke stuff, and often we're wrong because we are erroneously attaching all the woke stuff to lefties per se. And so for instance, Jordan Peterson, who is a self-described liberal, gets thrown in as some sort of alt-right guy when actually he's on the left. He just doesn't like, compelled speech. He just doesn't think that that's a good thing. And now he's, providing social commentary for a variety of things that he believes are, not particularly, good for freedom, and all this kind of stuff. So So you have that, but you also have people like, and I never ever thought in a billion years that this guy would be my guy. That I'd be like, man,
Mm.
this is my cat now. I can't believe this is the dude that's saying a lot of stuff. Most of the stuff he's saying right now is kind of like right up my alley, and that's Bill Maher. I never thought I
Yeah.
was going to be like Bill Maher's my guy. What the heck is going on with the universe? This stuff is like, is the end near? What, I don't know what's happening, but what's
Yeah.
happening
Yeah.
is that this stuff is so freaking stifling and ridiculous that even people that you never thought would agree with you on anything, you certainly wouldn't be caught dead agreeing with these cats. Now it's like with regularity. Uh, it's incredible, and even somebody like Dave Chappelle, who is a liberal. Dave Chappelle is on the left. Cats
Brett
don't recognize him.
Weinstein,
Yeah.
you know, Brett Weinstein, super lefty, super in that college over there, Evergreen College, where they do their lefty things. And his brother, by the way, Eric Weinstein, mentioned something that has to do with a certain kind of predictability of these types of people. That if you that people whom are doing interesting things in their field, right? And by doing so, necessarily, they typically will be on some kind of a frontier. They're dealing with something on the frontier. You're on the frontier of physics. You're on the frontier of biology. You're on the frontier of some kind of literary work, right? You're struggling with reality in that way, and reality is giving you its feedback. You're on the frontier of some kind of psychological whatever, right? And you're studying Jungian whatever, right? Like Jordan Peterson. Those people are not going to be fans of any kind of uniformity or groupthink, generally speaking. Okay. And it's also, if you cast it back to the grand narratives of Ayn Rand, that's the same thing that's going on, even though, because, there are many different lenses. When you put it in the political lens and you try to force it to fit in left or right or whatever, maybe you can, okay, but maybe it's not so useful. Or maybe it is useful for the ham and egger. But if you're going to discuss things in a word that you like, nuanced way, then
Mm-hmm.
you'll see that it's not really left right. It's that Brett Weinstein is a guy that's actually doing biology, okay? And when you're actually doing biology, you're like, whoa, 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 what world are you guys living in that you're saying all this crap? It's like the universe I occupy is one where I
Yeah.
have to contend with things. Yeah, and this
Yeah,
is
really,
yeah.
really, what this is, and this is interesting. It's all the people that are uh, empiricists. They believe in reality. The true. The objectivity. Right. It's the objectivists versus the other folks. That's what's happening right now. And the objectivists, it's been revealed that the objectivists actually exist on in lots of different places, several different
Mm-hmm.
spectrum. It's on a spectrum. They're all over the place on the political spectrum, and it's them saying this loony bin stuff has got to go. And because it used to be that we could agree on what the problem was. We'd agree on what the problem was, but we just have different approaches to the solution. Now we can't even agree on what the problem is. And largely it's because you got a bunch of loonies that are, floating in the clouds or something, or that don't recognize that words actually mean something, or I don't know what these folks are. I can't I can't deal with it, man. And then you have people that actually acknowledge that there is objectivity. There are things that are right and wrong. There is science, there is biology, there is stuff that's clearly there is the nature of existence. There is, the nature of reality. There is uh, the whole point of associating with other people and everything else is to try to get closer to the true nature of reality. But some kind of way they use it to get worse or so. I don't know how that works that way. I don't get it, man. I'm struggling.
It's an interesting thing. You would there are some people like if you were to go Nietzschean, and by that I mean a particular kind of it's a different kind of right in terms of left versus right. Nietzsche is a different kind of right. It's like, let's call it the new aristocracy, right? The new aristocracy, whereby number one, hierarchy is very important. The rank ordering is very important. They would say things such as, "Hey, this managerial class which we described, okay, that's just in a capitalist system, fine, but you lifted the plebs or the plebes, I don't know, you lifted the normie ham and eggers up to with education, okay, you give them, you taught them how to write, and very bad, Mr. Martin Luther, okay, for revolutionizing things in this way. Maybe it's not him particularly, but that whole stream of Martin Luther, let's open up the books to the people, blah blah blah." And now you have these people taking you see what I'm painting here, right? They are the ones that are not doing the real. The Nietzsche would say, "Hey, there's 2 real scientists in that university over there, and there's 100 BSers, and why are they there? They should be digging ditches or something like that, right?" That's a new aristocratic kind of point of view, which aesthetically, poetically, one may even say philosophically, I agree with. Economically, it doesn't work, it's not going to look very nice, right? In terms of we're democratic after all. We can't help but be influenced by the milieu in which we're in. But I 100% agree. Yeah, there's only 2 freaking artists over there. There's only 2 scientists over there. All those other freaking plebes are just freaking. They taught them how to read and write, and now everyone's freaking talking like they're on par with the actual scientists. No, they're not. And this is true in many, many regards in life.
This is a great point you're making. I was watching CGA. This was a couple days ago. I mean, I watched him today also, and I watched him yesterday. But so I'm not saying that I haven't watched him for a couple of days. That's kind of my yeah. I got to get my CGA fix. Anyhow, but but I think it was 3 days ago, and I was joking. I wrote in a comment to him. I said, because he said that he reviewed a TikTok where this woman was reading some scripture or something, and it was some scripture about being modest or something, or not being a nuisance or something. It was in Proverbs. You know how a lot of that language goes. I think it was the thing about something about a nagging woman it's like worse than living on the roof of a house. The corner of a house.
Of the roof of a house. It's kind of a funny thing. But I wonder what's particularly bad about the corner of their roofs. But anyways, go ahead.
Right. And so he was saying this, and then he says, I'm going to start reading the Bible. And he goes into this thing, and this I should clip this and do like a review just of that section. I was rolling so hard, man. He was talking about how he was going to start reading the Bible. He said, but I'm not going to be giving you that blue pill. I said, I'm going to be giving you the red pill Bible. He says it's going to be, he was talking about fire and brimstone and all this stuff that he was going to do. And what was he saying? Then he goes into this thing about how he says it's going to be the church of CGA, and he's going to do the same thing everybody else does and just read a bunch of stuff out of context. He's going to have his own version of the Bible. And I wrote it to him. I said, Negro, you're not about to read the Bible. He read the comment too. But that's actually what caused him to go into. He just went way in there. Oh my God! Oh, and he says he says, Dr. Thunder, and it's not going to be orthodox. He said it's not going to be that orthodox stuff. Don't be telling me about no orthodox. It's going to be like, I was rolling so hard, man. Oh my goodness.
Unorthodox.
But the reason that caused me to think of that is that whole thing, that whole Martin Luther opening the books. It's created that. I mean, CGA actually very cleverly was pointing out a serious issue. He was pointing out a serious issue, making fun of a serious issue.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this everybody, everybody gets a trophy. Everybody has a valid voice. Everybody can can weigh in. Everybody's opinion is important. All of this kind of stuff. And I'm sorry, that's just not true. Most of your opinions ain't important because you don't know nothing. You're not supposed to be talking about stuff that you don't know about. And that's just freaking humility. It's just freaking humility. It's just like acknowledging that, hey, I'm a freaking ham and egger. I should not be weighing in on freaking I don't know, molecular biology or something. Or, I shouldn't just be talking just because, and then, of course, anybody can do live stream now. You just open up a YouTube channel. You can start live streaming right from your phone. Right? You can say all kind of wild and crazy stuff. And hey, it's good. I mean, what did they do with the record company? It's like everything is following that same path of destruction. What they did with the record industry. Yeah, okay, maybe you didn't like the gatekeepers. Maybe you thought that maybe not all the cats that you wanted to get in there, your favorite kind of artist didn't get the deal. You thought okay, but you have to admit that the general quality level of all the stuff was a really particular kind of thing. Now what you have is it's a bunch of, there's more of everything, and perhaps there's more. Yeah, there's a lot of crap out there. There's a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting because Nietzsche is also associated with nihilism. He never said. Well, he did talk about that a little bit, but people will want to throw him in there. Nietzsche is great, by the way, because it's just so filled with rich stuff because it's more of a psychologist than a philosopher. He's not out there writing long texts like Heidegger, going through logic of stuff that doesn't matter. He's just like telling hey, this is what it is. Okay, yeah, you killed God, and so on and so forth. But one of the perhaps the attitude, and it's probably a nihilistic attitude to have. Nihilistic in a philosophical way, not just nihilistic in terms of what everybody else may think nihilism means, but let me just use that word there. Is okay, so yes, now you're in modernity, okay? And rather than lament it, like, I wish I could go back to the classical, whatever, you should perhaps say, I like some of the freedoms that it has allowed me, okay? Because even as a wannabe aristocrat, I know that back then I would have been tied up in particular ways that I actually enjoy now, if I'm being honest. The untying of which I enjoy now, right?
Right.
Now, unfortunately, the masses are not responsible, and they're not taking the freedom and taking it in the right direction. But what is to be done? And hey, it is perhaps your duty to point these things out, but also not be because now I'm doing psychology, right? This is a psychological thing, and I'm describing myself. It's not prescriptive at all. You don't want to be someone that is kind of bitter about the times,
Oh yeah. Right.
It's like, okay,
I don't know, man. I think I want to bring back despots, man. Despots, man. Despots was the thing, man, because you knew that you couldn't just be doing any hot mess, man. Despots kept you They kept you in the pocket. Despots kept you in
Yeah,
the pocket.
there's definitely a lot of good things about that hierarchy thing. It's interesting. It's interesting. The thing about this kind of more democratized modernity is that it does allow individuals now to create their own. And again, what's tough about this is you're talking about less than 1% of people, right? That's what's tough about about thinking this way. It's like only less than 1% of people. Well, first of all, 5% are quote unquote philosophical that would even be thinking about or being like, what the fuck are they talking about? Right? Like, what modern? And then less than 1% can actually not only think it, grasp it, understand it fully, but then see, I can create uh, my own aristocracy,
Yeah.
my own within, let's say, my family or my whatever, but aesthetically within my thinking. I can adorn myself with the highest of things, scientifically, philosophically, so on and so forth, spiritually, whatever it may be. I can do that. Perhaps even in the more iconoclastic way, if that's your thing. Iconoclasm is the spirit of the times, anyways. In a more iconoclastic way than in the past. Okay, but the sad thing is, you don't get to share that. Like before, it was like, oh, here's the pinnacle, here's the king, here's the highest of heights, and everybody looks up to that. No, that's not happening anymore. Now it's just you and your family. And whatever you create over there, it's for you. And as a matter of fact, it's just you, to be honest with you. Like, only
Yeah.
you get to see the splendor or whatever. There is no splendor for the masses. For the masses now, it's just popular music.
Pretty much. And woke indoctrination. Um. So yeah. So yeah, this has been a
How did
good.
we get here?
Yeah. We went. Yeah. But anyhow, I digress. Uh, you know, the I think you brought up several great points about being flexible, acquiring some tools, being able to utilize those tools, being able to sort of pivot, you know I in particular, I like the points that you made about um the distribution hack, and we went into that doorway a little bit, and we talked a little bit about this whole conflict of interest thing, and how they're going to tell you as a noob, ham and egger, first year guy. They're going to tell you that you better follow all the protocol and all the rules, while they are simultaneously breaking all the stuff that they told you to follow, so that they can, you know, expedite their pay raises and do all of this kind of stuff. It reminds me of an episode of The Office where, now I can't think of the guy's name right now because he was not a regular character. He was only on the show for one season, and I think it was part of one season. So he was the manager. So Jim takes a job at a different branch, and it's really because he can't handle being around Pam anymore, because Pam's going to marry Roy, and he's in love with Pam and all like this. So what ends up happening, he says, okay, I had enough of this, I'm moving to this other branch. So the guy that was the manager at that branch, I can't think of his name right now. So basically what this guy does is he facilitates, he postures himself with the higher ups, in particular with Jan, who's like what is she, like the COO or something of the company. He a new position which would have a lot more authority, a bigger reach, X, Y, and Z. So then what he does after he has them ready to go on that, ready to push go, he goes and leverages that against another position at Staples. And he ends up with a job that was a better job than the one that he would have had at Dunder Mifflin, and like this. So he leverages the job, and then it comes out that this is what he did. And of course, he violates all of these rules and all this stuff. He gets them to set up this position that he claims that if you don't set this position up, I'm going to leave. But it wasn't for a particular position. It was like, look, I need more to try X, Y, and Z. But then he leverages that against this other, and then he takes the other one because it's more money, better in every way. But they tell you don't do that kind of stuff. Don't do that. You're not supposed to, not supposed to try to, make as much money as you can at a much better company that somebody's actually heard of. You're not supposed to do that. And I know you like to eat and you like to be able to buy your kids shoes and stuff, but we, no, I don't care. I don't care if that's what you want to do. You're supposed to follow the rules, and it's amazing because you have all of these people, because most people believe that they're supposed to follow the rules. You got to follow the rules. And if they find out that you're not quite following the rules, they'll be the ones that are giving you tongue lashings. And they're sad. They haven't had a pay raise in so long. They're struggling. They can't get another car because they ain't got no money. All of that stuff's happening, but they're telling you need to follow the rules. So it's messed up how that stuff is. But anyhow, you have any final words about upward mobility and maybe some adjustments you've made along the way, or maybe you want to sum it up?
So money perhaps is something that we're gonna talk about more. Maybe we should talk more directly on this subject of money next week or something.
Sure,
But
that's good.
get a skill and then leverage that skill. It's my little mantra that I give all the time. Get a skill, leverage the skill, and then get other people's labor, leverage other people's labor, and then you get capital, and then you leverage capital, and it's repeat, repeat, repeat. In other words, you're getting more skills so you can leverage that, getting other people's labor, leveraging their labor, so that and capital is just excess, right? And when you have this excess, then you can for example, come over here to Africa, try things such as real estate. Is something else which I'm also doing, which is in the blockchain type world, right? Solving the problem with addresses. And again, I can give you the whole game. No one will know that. I didn't get the opportunity to mention this in terms of like other businesses, but blockchain, which basically is a way of an immutable ledger, right? You cannot change the information. So what's the problem? The problem is Africa uh, doesn't really have, lots of places in Africa don't really have addresses that are tied down with the same one address. Like this is the street, this is the longitude, this is the latitude, this is the location. This is obviously important for whether it's delivery, for mail services, for many things, for navigation, right? Google Maps, whatever it may be, right? And also same thing, they have issues with land deed. So with deed, ownership of the land and all these other kinds of things, right? So solving the ownership and, shall we say, uh, transportation and geolocation, let's just call it geolocation and ownership problems with the blockchain is that's the $1 billion idea right there. So obviously it involves creating something within the blockchain, writing with solidity, right? So this is not my particular thing that, I've mentioned the different things that I do. This is a new frontier, right? I don't, that's typically whatever. I'm not a coder, if you will. Shout out to Game Changer. But this is another avenue that I'm getting into where I can perhaps expend some capital, use some networks that I've kind of developed from other places, hook up, and the way this will work is, you write this stuff and then you hook up with people who have the infrastructure. Again, within Africa, the infrastructure will be data centers that's a distribution piece, right? They're the ones that are, it's in the cloud, right? They're distributing your stuff. They're creating the whole interface. The front of the face of the app is all in the data center. You are just a back end type of person whom is here to solve the problem and sell the solution to potential clients. Whom are the potential clients? Governments, real estate developers. Google might even want to get into this, because the idea is basically now your land deed is an NFT. This NFT, which is just a non-fungible token, which is basically, again, a part of the immutable blockchain, which immutable ledger, which blockchain is. Your longitude and latitude location is tied to an NFT, blah blah blah. That solves that problem. Okay, I went off into that tangent because I'm just, after doing the whole leveraging capital, which you have to get to, because I talk about that because you were talking about money. You have to get to the point of excess money in order to be able to leverage the
Oh
money
yeah,
to
right.
do other things. And
Absolutely.
uh, and or you just, I mean, look, business is it's a very interesting thing. The word business is boring and dry and dirty, and people don't really like it. But really, a business is a black box that has an inlet and an outlet. What's coming in and what's going out, and then what's inside the black box. That black box, if what's coming in is greater than what's going out, then the assets increase. Okay. And then you want to leverage those assets, either leverage it in terms of getting a loan or leverage it in terms of spending, reinvesting in the company to grow, to expand, to diversify. But this is the general, if I were to close, obviously I said all those other things in terms of separating yourself from the business being very important as to growing, right? You mentioned the other things that I mentioned with regards to distribution and whatnot. But if I were to reiterate the importance of creating a business, you have to separate yourself from it. That means you have to create a operating philosophy, create a separate brand, create a set of operations that are independent from you. Even though you're the top salesperson or whatever, it can be such that you hire a different CEO, different top salesperson, and you move out and the thing is still working. But the last thing I would say is, for those whom perhaps are not in business, a simple way to conceptualize business is, it's just that black box where there's an inflow and there's an outflow. Okay. And you want to increase the assets in the box. Why? So that you can do something else, right? So that you can do research and development for the business, or you can diversify like Google does, or whatever it is. But without that excess, then it's just in and out, hand to mouth, paycheck to paycheck, right? So you are a business in that regard, because you have stuff coming in, you have stuff going out, and you're trying to increase what's in there by making the stuff that's coming in uh, less or more than what's going out. And then what's in there, you're trying to leverage. Maybe you put money over here in 401k stuff. Maybe you're trying to dabble in some real estate. Maybe you're trying to reinvest in yourself by learning some new skills, and then you leverage that again, repeat, repeat, repeat. So business is simply that black box, okay? And a balance sheet is just that. People want to make it seem very, very complicated, um, because obviously you can, like I was talking about, if you think about the flow of water coming in and coming out, you can make it super complicated if you're following each individual molecule of water and like, oh, what's the path, what's the velocity, what's it this, what's it that. Or you could just be like, how many cubic feet per second comes in, how many cubic feet per second goes out. Okay. And who cares all the complications of what's going on in there? I say that because a balance sheet, the most important thing about a balance sheet is that you go to a boardroom anywhere, okay, a board meeting anywhere, and you are asking the most relevant question, because there will be a bunch of people out there trying to sound smart by saying things like EBITDA, and which is earnings before tax, debt, blah blah, whatever, all those complicated stuff. But really, it's okay. How much came in the last? Give me an average of how much came in the last 6 months, and how much went out in the last 6 months, and how much do you have in the bank? Okay, that's it. Okay, that means that everything shuts down now, because you can make decisions. If anything shuts down now, how much runway do you have? Because every last 6 months you spend $200,000 a month. Okay, how much do you have in the bank? You have 1 million. Okay, that means if everything shuts down, you have, I don't know, whatever 1 million divided by 200,000 is. Is it 50? Whatever that is, right? That's what you have in terms of a runway. Okay, that's what you can leverage in terms of if you're going to you're going to borrow money or whatever. That's your collateral. That's this. So the business is that black box with the inflow and the outflow, Everything else is just a way of accounting gimmicks and all the kinds of complicated things. There's no need to make it seem that way. And in that same regard, you yourself are a business as well. Those are my closing thoughts.
Yeah. Good show. Thanks for sharing. We will be back next week. We'll also be on my channel for the next couple Sundays for Case Closed, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've got a big special show on the 26th of February. Really big power show. It's going to be a Black History Month show. Ike, if you can stick around, I want to talk to you about what's going to happen this Sunday. Okay. And that's our time. We will see you next time on Ike's channel, Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. Peace.